Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. Davos is once again exposing growing fractures in the global order, and Central and Eastern Europe is caught squarely in the middle. As President Donald Trump sharpens his rhetoric on Greenland, tariffs and trade, and floats new geopolitical frameworks, CEE countries are weighing hard choices between transatlantic loyalty and EU unity. Joining us is Hugo Dixon, commentator at large at Reuters, to unpack how fragmentation, trade risk and geopolitics are reshaping the region. Welcome to TP World, Hugo, and thank you very much for taking the time.
Pleasure to be with you, Hashim.
Okay, so much to talk about. What is your biggest takeaway thus far from Davos?
I think the really big thing is that Donald Trump has blinked on Greenland. He said he would not take it by force, whereas previously he hadn't excluded that as a possibility. I thought it was unlikely that he would do that, but actually taking it off the table, at least for now, is quite a big change from where he was. And so there will be sighs of relief. That said, I think it's really important that Europe doesn't waste this crisis, because Trump could flip back any moment, either into taking Greenland by force or using other forms of blackmail to try to get Greenland or get his way in other ways, or just doing something from a sort of piquant sense of revenge.
Right.
So it's vital that Europe doesn't waste this crisis. And so what we've got is this important European summit tomorrow. And if I was advising the leaders, what I would say is ramp up the sense of crisis and use this as a moment to build Europe's strength.
Okay, so a number of issues here. First of all, you say that, thank goodness he's taken an invasion of Greenland off the table. Do you think he was ever really serious about it? I mean, was that simply not just a negotiating tactic, to see how many concessions he could squeeze out of Denmark and the EU?
Well, it might have been, and I think that one has to sort of view Trump as a sort of as a sort of wild beast that sort of circles his prey, and if he can find an easy way in, he goes for it, and if he can't, he pulls back. But then that doesn't mean he's gone away completely, because if he senses another weakness, he might come in again.
Right.
I didn't think it was likely that he would invade Greenland within hours of the capture of Maduro in Venezuela. I was saying I put it as about a 20% chance. Maybe it's gone down a bit. I don't think it's gone off the table, and that's why I think that and Europe and the reason it hasn't gone off the table is because Europe is structurally weak. It cannot yet defend itself properly, and it cannot yet defend Ukraine properly. And these are things that Trump knows. But of course, what Trump has displayed is that he's not a complete dictator either. There are other forces at play, both outside the United States and within the United States. And, we've seen some speculation that some military figures might not have been willing to go ahead, American military figures, with an invasion of Greenland. We saw the Catholic bishop of America, who is also the one who is attached to the American military, saying that actually it could be legitimate for soldiers to follow their consciences and not do what they were ordered to do. We've seen people in Congress, Republicans in Congress, denouncing this, even suggesting that Trump could be impeached. Impeached not just is, of course, the first step, but actually convicted. And so there's quite a lot of pushback. And of course, then there were the markets, and the markets didn't have a massive fall, but they had quite a big fall yesterday. Let's say a sort of a warning shot. It was about 2% off the stock market and 1% off the dollar. So in from us sitting in Europe, that was a 3% fall. So you put all of that together, and I think that we have to realize that it's, of course, Europe is weak, but Trump is not a full dictator. And we have to use this time that we've got to ramp up the sense of crisis and to build our strength.
Well, Europe may be weak, relatively speaking, at the moment, but it is fighting back. Ursula von der Leyen talking about a deal is a deal. President Macron of France saying that then France is not going to be bullied. So there is some kind of fight back from Europe. One thing, though, I mean, does it surprise you that so little has been said about the war in Ukraine at Davos?
Well, yes, in a way, although in a way it's there lurking behind the whole discussion of Greenland is the discussion of Ukraine. And actually, Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, said that the priority is Ukraine. Now, the fact is the two are joined at the hip. And if Trump was to take Greenland by force, that would be the end of NATO. And if that was the end of NATO, not only would Ukraine probably fall to Russia within a matter of, who knows, some period of time, but Putin might even be tempted to say, well, this is the best opportunity I've had for ages to try and grab the Baltic states. And so this would be an absolutely massive sense of crisis. So I think that this is a problem. But I think the other thing that of course is that tomorrow, I think it is tomorrow, that Trump's representative Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner are off to Moscow to see Putin with the idea of trying to close a deal on Ukraine. And Trump himself said that he was looking forward to seeing Zelensky in Davos later today. Well, Zelensky wasn't in Davos. Maybe he's fast getting on an aeroplane to try and get there to meet Trump. So I think that Ukraine is still there. But if you remember, the problem is that it's not just that there's a huge gulf between what Russia wants and what Ukraine is prepared to give in terms of a peace deal. There's still a gulf between what America wants, what Trump wants, and what Zelensky is prepared to give. They talk about there being a 90% agreement, but the 10% difference is absolutely critical. This is over what happens to Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. And Trump wants Zelensky to pull his troops out of that. And of course, Zelensky doesn't want to do that because it's not just loss of territory, although Trump says, don't worry, you won't have lost your territory, it'll just be demilitarized. But effectively, he will be giving up his fortress belt and making himself a sitting duck if Putin was to try to invade again. So there is still this huge difference of opinion, even though they talk about 90% agreement. And so the challenge, you will see what happens in Moscow, but the challenge, it seems to me, is to try to get the Washington position and the Kiev position aligned. And really, the only sensible position from Europe's perspective is to bring the Trump position closer to the Zelensky position. Now, if we can do that, and that's a huge if, but if we can do that, then we're in a much, much better position, because it's not that Putin will agree to that, he won't, but at least there's a better chance that America will stand by Europe and stand by Ukraine over the next year or so until finally the economic pressure gets put into crack.
Well, sadly,
so
sadly, President Trump hasn't shown much inclination to do that. He always seems to be falling on the side of the Russians. Now, you talk about economic pressure.
Can I just come in there?
Go for it.
Just come in there. I mean, yes and no, but of course he hasn't done what he should have done. But the sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil, these big Russian oil companies that America imposed a few months ago, are having a huge effect on Russians' oil revenue. And if we can maintain, and that is America, although Europe did it, it's America's secondary sanctions that are really biting. And if we can maintain that pressure or even increase it, I really think that in about a year, it will take about a year, but that Putin's finances will crack and we could have a financial crisis in Moscow.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, a year in which lots of Ukrainians are being killed, and Trump could take much faster action simply by giving Ukraine more weaponry. But I'd like to move on before we run out of time, if we may, Hugo, to the tariffs, the economic pressures that you mentioned. Now, President Trump does use tariffs as a weapon. He's threatening, for example, countries who don't want to join his board of peace with tariffs. How successful has his tariff strategy been on Europe? I mean, he's imposed tariffs. They've come to some sort of working agreement, but now he's threatening even more. And Ursula von der Leyen is saying, "Well, a deal's a deal. You can't just keep changing the goalposts every 5 minutes."
Yes, I think that's reasonable. And what you've seen is that the European Parliament has suspended work today, formally suspended work on that trade deal. That's a trade deal that was going to cut tariffs on American goods in return for America only having 15% tariffs on European goods. So I think that actually has possibly backfired. That initiative by Trump. And what we also don't know is whether he even has the legal authority to impose these tariffs unilaterally. Again, that is something that is going to be considered by the Supreme Court in America. And they've indicated that they might rule against him, in which case the Emperor Trump will be shown to be wearing no clothes, and his threats will be even more hollow. Now, I don't want to exaggerate this because I think that he still can do a hell of a lot of damage to Europe. And I'm not one of those who's in favor of Europe escalating this conflict. What we need to do is we need to buy time. We need to be strong, but not confrontational. And we need to use that time to build our strength and reduce our dependence. And so one of the things that I would do is I would say, well, look, let's use this crisis to increase immediately this year in Europe defense spending by 100 billion euros. And let's pay for that with common euro bonds. Use the crisis to actually do something positive.
Right.
Now, it's difficult to see how Trump could object to that.
Well, we shall indeed see. So many cards in play at the moment. Hugo Dixon, unfortunately, we have to end it there. But thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. News coming right up. Goodbye for now.